Hi everyone. My name is Rachel Morley, and as you hopefully know, I'm the coordinator for the Imaginative Life. And as you'll know from my recent announcement, I'm beaming in, as it were, for a very, very special opportunity. And that's to talk one-on-one with a writer who's not only published her first novel to great acclaim, she's also been teaching and working in Western Sydney schools and communities, helping young people to tell their stories. So I'm going to introduce you to Rawah in a moment, but before I do, I just want to start by acknowledging that this interview between us is being recorded, for me at least, on the lands of the Pambalong clan in Awabakal country. And Awabakal means the land of the plain or flat surface, and it refers to the surface of Lake Macquarie, which is also known as Awaba, which is Australia's largest coastal saltwater lake. I'm new to the place, but I'm really finding that it's a very extraordinary place with a very special energy. And as I record, I can imagine that they're going to be possums scampering on the rooftops probably in about 15 minutes, and they can get pretty noisy. So forgive me if you do hear any loud bangs as we go on. So as I mentioned in my announcement, we're coming to the end of semester. You're all working on your assignments, and together with some of the other creative writing staff, we thought it would be really terrific to end on a high note with an author interview. Now, Rawah Arja is a writer and a teacher from Western Sydney, and she's the author of the acclaimed debut novel, The F-Team. And she's kindly agreed to take some time out of her schedule to talk with me and to answer a few questions that have been sent in by you. And I'm really, really chuffed about this. So thanks so much, Rawah.
Thank you for having me.
Absolute pleasure. So for those who haven't had a chance to read the bio that I sent out, Rawah's book has been shortlisted for numerous awards, and her writing has featured in a number of collections, including the just published Second City, Essays from Western Sydney, which was launched, what are we today, Tuesday, Wednesday, wasn't it? Last week. Yep, last Wednesday. So she's received a number of different writing fellowships to support her writing. She's a member of the Finishing Collective of Women Writers, and she teaches creative writing at schools and workshops. And I know some of you are really keen to go on with that as well. So we're going to cover a couple of topics tonight, traversing over early writing experiences, some more recent ones, and some tips and tricks for new and emerging writers. So I'm really excited about diving in. All right, so let's start with the backstory, Rawah. And I've given the students the official bio, of course, but what else do you think that they should know about you to kick off this chat?
That I never wanted to be a writer. I never in my life dreamed that I would ever write. I thought I would, I can't believe I'm saying this, but I thought I would be married with children. Not that it's a bad thing, but I actually thought that's what my life was going to head towards. And if it wasn't going to be that, I was really wanting to be an archaeologist. But my Arabic isn't so good. And so trying to explain to my dad that I want to dig up dead people in Egypt didn't really go down too well. And he was just like, just leave dead people alone. Maybe try to focus on helping the living instead of the dead. And I thought
good advice, yeah.
I thought that was, good advice. But you pretty much summed it up. I've been teaching and in the same area that I grew up in. I grew up in Punchbowl. I say that very proudly. I grew up in, I live in the same house that 32 years now. And why I say I'm proudly from Punchbowl, it's because I grew up thinking that I couldn't love where I was from because of the negative sort of swirl of stories surrounding my suburb. And so it's really important for me for every single interview that I'm in that I actually make it known I'm from the Canterbury-Bankstown region, because I know a lot of the kids that I teach in the same region feel a little bit, not that they're ashamed, but embarrassed maybe. And so I feel like I want to be a beacon of light. If I can say it and I'm proud, maybe they can. And I think that sums up my whole bio. I grew up feeling as though I didn't matter and I didn't belong, being a Muslim female Arab woman growing up in a Western world. And so I think that that sort of fear and not really coming to terms with my identity really shaped the way the next, I guess, phase of my life, which was reading and writing. But I never wanted to do that ever.
That's amazing. I mean, I'm reminded that I read in preparation for our chat that you had once said that you thought your story didn't matter, and I can hear, of course, echoes in that of what you're saying just now. I mean, how did things shift for you?
Basically, when I started teaching, so I never read, and I think I would say this, like the first book I ever read, I was 16 years old. Whenever the teacher would say to read, I would pretend I was reading. And any essay response towards text, it was Google. I don't say it proudly, but that's what it was. I never really put effort into to reading. I felt like it was a school chore. I would only do it because the teacher said to do it. And then I read Lukufala Brandy and I found Run Out the Fatah, Does My Head Look Big in This? And it sort of changed my life. And I couldn't believe up until that point that I felt as though my life didn't matter, or the story of a Muslim had to be second best. I always had to, and I had to accept being at the back of the line. That's the way the world was going to work for me. There were places that I can and can't go, and I just have to accept it or tolerate it. There was no celebrating my culture or my religion. And that changed until I started teaching, because reading really gave me a sense of purpose and a backbone. And I thought that story was isolated to myself. I only felt like I didn't belong. And then I started teaching in the same area that I grew up in, and realized the kids from Punchbowl Boys, Belmore Boys, all along Greenacre, Wally Park, all these kids were mirroring my experience as a child and as a teenager. And I sort of got shocked because I thought it was just me. But they don't like reading. They look at it as a school chore. But there was one kid from Punchbowl Boys, and I said, why don't you like reading? Or what is it about reading that you don't like? And he said, because I'm always the bad guy. So why would I ever want to read? And that changed my life. That changed everything. I was 25 when that happened. And the same group of Year 6 kids that I taught said the same thing. We don't like reading because in other words, they said we're not represented. And if we are represented, we're represented by people that don't look or sound like us. And I basically said as a joke, I just said, so what if I write a book, would you read it? Not knowing that they were like, yes, yes, yes. And I was like, I don't know what I got myself into. And I actually thought, like I said, and I think we'll touch on this later, but I thought it would take 2 weeks to write a book, to be honest with you, and then publish in like a week. So let's say maximum a month, I would have a book out there and I would give them something that represented them. Yeah, it took 4 years.
Yeah, wow. I mean, yeah, as you say, we're going to get to the book, but I mean, gosh, you say so eloquently this, and talk to the social power of writing, right, and the critical importance of representation. And I'm thinking about the incredible work that's being done in Western Sydney over the last 5 to 7 years by a number of different writers and writers collectives as well. I mean, the scene's really shifted, right, in Western Sydney.
I think so. I think it's because a lot of people from Western Sydney are not accepting the narrative anymore that we are second best or our stories don't matter. I felt like in the last 5 years in particular, it's almost like when I say shifted, almost like into a hub where we've now supported each other. I feel connected. I feel as though I'm not alone. I feel as though if I wanted to reach out, that I could find a number of writers from Western Sydney. And that is so incredible and so empowering for once upon a time where I felt like I was alone and I was by myself. And it's not, like I said before, it's not just like, oh, great, you're from Western Sydney. It's great, you're from Western Sydney. Like, it's like I always mirror it to any Muslim would know this, especially a hijabi. If we see in a commercial, like a woman in a hijab in like a Toyota commercial, like every Arab would want to buy a Toyota now because they're not racist, they support Muslims in a way. So it's like seeing yourself on TV. I remember as a kid seeing a Muslim, I was like, oh my God, this is the most incredible feeling in the world. It's rare, but when it happens, you can guarantee everyone on WhatsApp is messaging each other. So.
Yeah. I mean, I've got my own favourites from the Western Sydney writers, but have you got particular favourites that you'd recommend to some of our students?
Sarah Ayub is amazing. Felicity Castagna is amazing. There's a group of people from Sweatshop. There's a group of writers from finishing school. Wonderful people. So you just sort of find who you mold with, and yeah.
How have you found that community? I mean, you're a member of Finishing Collective.
Yeah.
And for people who don't know, that's a community of women writers, and Felicity is a key member of the collective. But how have you found that those communities, and I mean, how important have they been for you? And what would you say to students who perhaps feel quite alone in their writing practice?
Everything. I joined the Finishing School Collective when I was maybe 26 or 27, and that was the most critical point of my writing. I was so lost. I had no idea where to go. Like I said before, I don't know anybody. No one in my family is a writer. No cousins, no friends, no one in my circle, my networks is a writer. So I can't even turn to them and say, hey, what do you do after you finish a manuscript? But Felicity reached out to me, actually, after I failed to get a fellowship many times. I failed many things. And she said, I think I'd love to help you out. And I thought that was incredible. And the group of women that I met there truly gave me and empowered me to actually find my voice. We would meet every so often, every few months, sometimes once a month. We do things like the Sydney Writers Festival together. But before that, I loved the part before we had a vet, because we'd sit down and we'd sort of bounce off each other and go, this is what I'm reading. What do you think? Should I say it like this? Should I do it like this? Should I take out this part? And it's just a buzz between us women, beautiful, strong women, that there was no competition. It was all of us truly trying to push each other to succeed. And it's a very successful finishing collective of group of women. And I don't say it because I'm in it, but truly it's some of the best people you ever meet. And it's very important to find a network of people. So you could at least, because writing is a lonely process. You're by yourself, you sit in front of that laptop or the notepad, and you need to speak to people so you don't drown. I mean that honestly. I was drowning until I found writers, and they saved me.
Yeah, I want to backtrack, because I mean, we had you at 16, having that reading experience, and then you're at 25, and you're teaching in schools, and you have that moment with that young man, that your boy, who says there's people aren't like me in these books, and when they are, I'm the bad guy. How do you get to then publishing a book? What's happening there? I mean, I'm thinking about our students who they want to write, but
yeah.
What happens to them next? How did you get there, and what do you suggest for them?
I learned the hard way that it's a long process, but I was lucky. I never wanted to be a teacher. It's funny now, looking back, I understand why things worked out the way they did, because the stories, the characters, and the events that I got from over 10 years of teaching, you can't get that anyway. It's firsthand experience of students. So I completely understand now why I became a teacher. But I asked 3 questions to my classes, and I taught mainly boys. And I said to them, what is it going to take for you to read? Because I was so passionate about reading, because I knew what it did to me. And they said 3 things. 1, can you put like Arab characters in there? And I was like, okay, that's easy. 2, can you make it funny? Can you put some jokes? And I was like, okay, yes, that's totally easy. And the 3rd one always shocks me. But they said, can you put McDonald's in there? And I didn't understand it. And I thought, and they're like, specifically Punchbowl McDonald's. And I never understood why was that important. And then they explained it to me. And they're very cheeky, but they're naughty, but they're very smart at the same time. I said, why would you want me to put Punchbowl McDonald's? I don't understand. And they said, because I've been there. I know what it looks like. I know the people. I can see it in my mind if I read about it. And so that really sort of sparked a whole new world for me in terms of senses, and how important it was to, if I was writing about representation, it was not only about characters, but it was about places. I grew up reading about places I've never been to. I'm never going to connect with it, especially for reluctant readers. For reluctant readers, you have to connect on a relation basis. So they have to relate to the story. And Punchbowl McDonald's was one of them. And I wrote it, and I sort of weaved in, and I put a lot of places. Then he gave me an idea of Jannah and the Punchbowl Strip. No one's ever written about it. So I thought, why not? Let's do this.
And it comes back again to acknowledging your story, right? Acknowledging where you're from,
Yes.
acknowledging life experiences, and thinking, how do you bring those into an imaginative world?
Yeah, I grew up, like I said, thinking that I wasn't allowed to love where I was from. And these kids think and feel the same. And you have to break that. And like I said, I never wanted to be a writer. I accidentally fell into this. I did it because as a teacher and from my professional experience, I saw bits and pieces missing from the curriculum. And as a writer, I saw what was missing. And just as a human being, I saw what was missing and what was needed. And so when you mesh those together, out comes the F team. And I wrote about sport, and I wrote about 4 boys, because publishers said to me, no, we're not going to publish your story because girls are the predominant readers, and that's where we make money. That's the market. And I thought, what's the alternative for boys? If you're saying boys aren't readers, maybe give them something worth reading. And ask them, quite literally. Everyone thinks there's this magical sort of secret to books. It's not. I literally just asked the kids, I was like, what do you want me to write about?
Yeah.
Simple.
All right, we're going to do the F stop in a moment, but tell me, what did you study? You did a Bachelor of Arts and then teaching, or what was your progression there?
I did a Bachelor of Arts, and I majored in English text and writing, and some majored in English linguistics.
At Western Sydney, right?
Yes, at Western Sydney. And then I went on to do my Masters of Teaching.
Yeah, cool. All right. Tell us about the book.
Okay, so the book is called The F Team, and it's about a young boy named Tariq Nader, who's from Punchbowl, who's turning 16. Symbolism is really important for me. Tariq in Arabic, or Tariq in Arabic, means path or trying to find your way. And I thought that was very symbolic to any teenager, especially being at 15, 16, trying to find a way, especially being in Punchbowl, and constantly surrounded by negative media. And I thought, I like to flip things on their head. So I remember I still live in Punchbowl, and the negative media was around Punchbowl boys, and they wouldn't leave them alone. Yeah. And I thought, wouldn't it be funny to get a perspective on the inside? And so quite literally, the opening chapter of the book is the media swarming the school, but the boys are noticing a hot reporter, and they're trying to film the hot reporter and trying to send it on Snapchat. Like, that's quite literally what the first chapter is about. But they get caught and etc. But basically, their school's going to shut down. They're not interested in school. They have this bad reputation. They're constantly in the media. In comes a new principal who's white, who's Irish, and they automatically think he's there because the police have put them there because they want to put all Arabs in jail. That's their theory. And it turns out that this teacher was from Cronulla. And he thinks that the best way to change the image of the school is to create a footy competition, a rugby league competition between neighbouring schools. And basically, the story starts to then centre around the brotherhood of boys from Punchbowl and boys from Cronulla. It's quite obvious if people don't know why I picked Cronulla, but if people don't know, the Cronulla riots in 2005 shaped a lot of things in my community. And we never really talk about it. No one wants to talk about it. But I sort of brought it back in a way where it's not so much rehashing about what happened, but at a way how can we grow and learn from horrible experiences. They don't have to shape and define who you are. And that principle is that beacon of light. But the boys really learn about each other, and they hate each other at the beginning. They don't really care about the school, and then sort of takes you on a journey and going through life obstacles and whether or not they win the grand final.
Hey, yeah. And I mean, all right, so you have that exchange at school, and then you 4 years to write the book? Or
yeah.
4 years from idea to publication? Or
yeah, idea to publication, about 4.5 years.
Yeah. How do you meet your publisher? How does all that happen?
So something that people don't tell you, and I wish people told me, is that you have to build a network, right? No publisher is going to take you. It's very rare if they do. If you've just written a manuscript and you submit it online, because they have those online where you just submit it. Maybe they have it once a month, and if you're lucky, you catch it, or you have to wait for the next month. Or you just submit it, and they don't tell you. They give you no feedback whatsoever. If they contact you, great. And if they don't, you have no idea where your manuscript is. I was rejected from 14 different publishers for this book.
Okay, I'm going to interrupt you for a moment. So note that, students, 14 different publishers, and now note the number of, award nominations and all the incredible acclaim. All right, so
I can give JK a run for her money.
Yeah.
Pretty much. Actually, funny enough, I have my cupboards here and I have the list on my cupboard. I never forget. I wrote it down to remind me every time I go to work. I see it. It's the 14 names that, and it's not so much that because they didn't believe in the story. Yes, that could be the case, but my writing needed work.
Yep.
So I didn't know there was such thing as fellowships to refine my writing skills. I didn't know that there was residencies. I didn't know that there was writing groups and networks. That really helped me. My writing went from here to here because I was getting experience from industry experts, and they were saying, this is exactly what we like, this is what we don't want. And I listened to their feedback, and I went to my Felicity, actually, who is working with Germondo, said, I'd like you to meet Rawah to the publishers. And that was like 2 years later.
Yep.
And I signed my contract in 2018, July 1st.
Okay. So you finish the manuscript, you submit it to the, all of these
publishers. Oh, no, not really. Not in my case, no.
Okay.
I didn't finish it. So I was 3/4 done. But because I knew Felicity on a face-to-face basis for a few years at that point, and she had worked with me, they reluctantly agreed to take on 3/4 of their manuscript on the condition that I really had to work to make it work, basically.
So that network was really important there.
Oh, yeah, it was everything. It was truly everything.
All right. I've got 2 more questions for you. One is, two actually coming in from a student. So I'm going to read this one, if you don't mind, everybody.
Yeah.
All right. So she asks, in working for your dream in a creative field, whether that's writing, music or film or any other of the creative industries, some argue that the multi-skilled business acumen that's needed to succeed can really eat into creative output. And she wants to know how you balance the concealed labor of creative work, such as emailing and applying for grants and doing all of that work, with your creative work, and whether you find that affects your ability to create.
Yeah, look, nobody likes responding to emails. I don't like it at all. But you have to think of your purpose. So my purpose was to get the book to kids, to schools. That was my initial purpose. That's the reason why I wrote. While it's nice to get accolades and be acknowledged from industry experts, that's not why I did this. I did it because I wanted those kids to read. So if that means I have to answer 10 emails a day, then so be it. So you have to really think about your purpose and why you do things. You have to be really organized with your time. I sort of leave it at night between 6:30 to 7:30. I check all my emails, and it's really important to be prompt and respond, because that could mean a job or not. I know so many people that don't hire writers because they just don't respond, and they think it's okay to respond like 2 weeks later. It doesn't work that way, especially if you're working with schools. If you just want to write a book and sort of just give it to the world and let the world take it, and that's fine. But if you want kids to read it, if you're writing for young adult, and if you want to be part of schools, you have to be on the ball. Schools are unpredictable and ever changing, so you just have to work with that. And if you have a passion for something, my dad always says this, if you love something, you'll make time for it. It doesn't matter what it is in the world. Nobody likes going to the gym, no one, but you do it because you get benefits. Nobody likes responding to emails, but you do it because there could be a paid job after that. Or you can meet someone extraordinary and you don't know where the next door opens. I remember driving to the Blue Mountains, 2 hours from where I live. It would be so cold and foggy, I barely could see, to read to 2 people in a library. But my passion was to get my story out. Now, it doesn't, I think sometimes writers, I get new writers and I speak to them and they think now having so many, awards and accolades and things like that, that it was easy, that they forget that. I know I was driving to the Blue Mountains 3 years ago. This was in 3 years in advance. You only see the good stuff now, the social media stuff and the meeting and greeting and the parties. That was 4 years in the making for me, for that to happen. So if you love something, make time for it.
Yeah. All right. Another student asks what your writing practice is and if you write regularly, how things tend to happen for you in that way.
So when I was writing the F-Team, it was the craziest schedule. I think I would write 12 hours a day. So I actually quit my job to write. So I was teaching, and then the end of 2018, it was crunch time, and my publishers were like, we need to have this, we need to have it done. And so I took a whole year off. minimum wage. But I write about 12 hours a day. That's my schedule. But no one on earth does that, I don't believe, to be quite honest with you. But I enjoy it. Like I wake up at 10 o'clock and I would write to 10, 11 at night. I like it. The only time I have breaks is when I have to eat, maybe move my legs around. So I end up in a wheelchair.
Do you write quickly, or are you a slow writer? I mean, in that time?
So my process is I have to write on a notepad first. I write everything handwritten. And then quite literally when I transfer over to my laptop, nothing gets transferred over. I don't know why. When I start typing, it's all these new ideas come and I just cut and cut and cut. But my process is to get everything out, then edit. I know some writers can't do that. They edit as they go. I find that very, very difficult. I just need to get it out and sort of pick out what I really like and then throw out the rest. It's a longer process, but I learn a lot about myself and the characters as well.
Yeah, you write the story out first and find out what you need to know and then can come back. Yeah. All right, last question. I know that everyone's going to go off to dinner, or what you and I do anyway, but so we've got our students who, when they're going to get this, they're working towards their final assignments. You have taught students, you know what it's like with deadlines and the like. Do you have any tips and tricks for them in terms of getting work done when pressures are mounting and the deadlines are mounting, and things are hard, really difficult?
Yeah, I think not to sort of be too hard on yourself. I was like that. I felt like the whole world was on my shoulders, especially because I wasn't punctual with my time. If I was organized with my time, I wouldn't feel that way. And this idea of tomorrow I'll do it, or after a few hours I'll do it, that doesn't work at all. Take it from someone who used to do assignments the night before. It's just that exhaustion is not worth it. So if you just do it a few days before, I don't understand. I don't know if you're going to disagree with me in this, but I don't start my assignments too early because I'm a pressure person. So I like to have 4 days. 4 days I need to do this assignment. That's the way I work. So I get it when people don't like to start way too early. But when you're at university and you have 4 other assignments, 4 other subjects, it can't work that way. So my best tip for anyone at university is just to use your time wisely, because at the end it's going to benefit you. You don't have to feel that exhaustion or that pressure.
Yeah, it's a horrible feeling when you can just see that clock ticking and it's 11:56.
Like enjoy it.
Yeah.
If you're not enjoying whatever you're writing, then it's always going to be difficult, even if you start 3 weeks in advance. Try to find something that you love and that you truly know inside out how to write it.
Great advice. All right. Is there anything that you want to say before we wrap up? Or?
Good luck.
Hey. Thanks, Rawah, so much for your time. We really, really, really appreciate it. I'm going to press stop, and then everybody, I'm just going to thank Rawah off camera. But thanks heaps, and it's been really, really fantastic talking to you. Thank you.
You.
All right.